Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Gay with God podcast, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Or are we still searching? The stories you hear on this podcast will melt your heart and strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with the God of your understanding. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Gay with God podcast. I'm so glad that you're joining us today, and I want to give a shout out to my guest, Matthew Roach, who was so kind and rescheduled for me because of some Wi-Fi problems last week. And so it's been a journey, but Matthew got rescheduled, and I'm so excited, and I will introduce you to him in just a little bit. I do want to remind you, it's now April, and you still got time, but in July at the Wild Goose Festival, we are going to be joining together, and I'm taking, again, the Gay with God podcast there to record live. I have a guest, Gail Tabor, who's going to join me this year, and I just can't wait to invite you to hear her and listen to her. So if you want to do that live with me, if you want to be in the audience while we're doing that and come to the Wild Goose Festival, I have a special discount code from them that you can use when you get your ticket. And you can find that discount code on the website for the show, empoweredmidge.podbean.com. You can get to see all of Matthew's contact information when you go there, and you get to see the whole bio. So please stop by and see that anyway. But if you want the discount code, it will also be listed there in today's show notes. And if you don't know about the Wild Goose Festival, it is a transformational community grounded in faith-inspired social justice. How can you not like that? And it's a one-of-a-kind gathering that brings together artists, activists, seekers from all walks of life to explore justice, art, spirituality, and community. It is the most inclusive, open place I've ever been, well, except for at P-Town during Women's Week. That was awesome. But this is also awesome. And you can find lots of good connections and friends there. So I hope you'll join us. So again, go to empoweredmidge.podbean.com for all of today's information and the discount code that you can get $50 off a ticket, an adult ticket. There you go. All right. So today, Matthew Roach is here, pronouns he, him, his, from Hayesville, North Carolina, born and raised in the buckle of the Bible Belt. Ooh, that just gives me chills. He was submerged in the culture of old-fashioned evangelical religion. All his life, he knew he was not a straight male. But the leather-lunged, mountain-style preaching with hellfire and damnation imagery kept him in the closet and ultimately led to years of suicidal ideation until he finally found the strength to accept his God-given identity. After confiding in a dear friend of 10 years, he was outed to the church, his family, and friends. As a minister of 8 years, a musician and worship leader since age 8, his coming out was met with intense resistance and ridicule. Through all of the turmoil, the peace and freedom he now experiences had made the journey worthwhile, and he has a newfound excitement for the future. Matthew is in healthcare, is currently studying medical sonography, and has plans to relocate after college and become part of an affirming church in an effort to once and for all love people as God truly calls us all to love. Amen. Amen. Matthew, that sounds like it's been quite the journey. And welcome to the Gay with God podcast. I'm so glad.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. Tell us your story.
So, jumping right in, like I said in my bio, raised in the buckle of the Bible Belt, often joked as a child that we had a drug problem. We were drugged to church every time the door was open. From my earliest memories, I knew that I was not a straight male. Like I said, that I was gay, and totally the typical gay little boy who loved dresses and high heels and tiaras and pink, and at the same time had a very macho father
Mm.
who I have a great relationship with now. We'll get to that in a moment. Um, I had that in my life to show me, what, straight male masculinity was. So what I was being taught in the church, at home, everything, it was just this internal struggle my whole entire life. And looking back, I see the struggle of hearing Sunday after Sunday that, you are vile and you're sinful and you're all these things. It That's why I mentioned, years of suicidal ideation.
Mhm.
I had just gotten to the point where I did not want to live. I
Mhm.
knew that I was a gay man and begged God, begged God to fix me, to change me, to take this away from me.
Mhm.
And so nothing changed. Nothing got better. Nothing was fixed. And as a teenager, I remember kind of coming out sort of to some of my friends saying, I am not attracted to girls. I am attracted to guys. And then so I got like one foot out of the closet and then stepped right back in.
Mhm.
Started started having a lot of suicidal ideation as a teenager. To the point that I went and made all of my funeral plans, had
Mhm.
everything planned out. I mean, for years back and forth with that. And just hopeless that nothing was changing, nothing was getting fixed, and that something was so horribly wrong. So the internal struggle just kind of continued for years. And I I had girlfriends. I dated a couple of girls, had one rather serious relationship, and broke it off because I knew that I could never love her the way that she deserved to be loved.
Mhm.
So I moved away from my hometown for about 2 years. And I thought, well, the move, I'll go somewhere else, find a young woman to settle down with and change of pace. God will fix it. Got moved and nothing changed. Of
Because you
course.
brought yourself, didn't you, buddy? You
I
brought
did.
yourself.
That, yes, yes. So after just this is a podcast for another time, but after just a boatload of trauma and just self-loathing, I finally was like, okay, I am over the games, over the pretending. Let's dig into this and see what this is about. And finally in September of this past year, like I said, after a boatload of trauma, I finally came to terms with I am a gay man.
Mhm.
And hadn't settled that with my faith at that point, but to the point where I knew to retain my sanity and to live, I had to accept it in some way.
Mhm. So
And
it
I
got
thought,
to the point where you were either going to kill yourself or even without rectifying it with your faith to stay on the planet, you just had to accept it and then it was going to take you somewhere.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
had to just, some would say, I don't like using the words give in, but just had to
Mhm.
accept it. Just
Uh-huh.
had to
Uh-huh.
release that struggle, that inner
Mhm.
turmoil.
Mhm.
So I did that. And I was actually seeing a therapist at that point, thank God.
Mhm.
And I believe God does all things well. And God totally just had to orchestrate
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
therapist client relationship,
Mm-hmm.
because we had built this rapport of his experience with the LGBTQ plus community. And that's when I knew, okay, this is a safe place to confide.
Good.
And I just looked at him and I told him, I said, I think I'm gay. And he looked at me, and I'm waiting for the lightning to strike. I'm waiting to spontaneously combust. And he looks at me and he says, so what if you are?
Good guy. Good guy.
And so the first time I ever watched your or ever listened to your podcast, Cody Allage, I have to give
Mm-hmm.
him a plug here,
Yep.
adore him.
Mm-hmm.
He said that it was like he breathed oxygen for the first time.
Ah.
Perfect analogy. When
Mm.
he when my therapist looked at me and said, so what if you are? So what if you are? It was like I had just that was my first day of life.
Oh, wow.
And all of my childhood trauma and all this stuff comes rushing back. And I'm thinking, why have I waited until I am
Mm-hmm.
25 years old, have gone through some of the darkest times in my life to
Mm-hmm.
finally have this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
So, stayed somewhat closeted for a while. I moved back to Hayesville in November of this past year and was still having the internal struggle somewhat of I had accepted, yes, this is who I am. This is how life is just going to be. And pretty much came to the conclusion my faith will just have to catch up.
I love that.
My faith will just have to catch up, um, because I cannot live with the gloom, doom, dark cloud hanging over me for the rest of my life.
Right.
And so I was hanging out with some friends, a dear friend at the time. And I mean, these were friends that we shared Thanksgivings, Christmases, birthdays, everything together. We were like family. And in the form of kind of a prayer request, heads up, like, hey, I just want you to know I am not attracted to girls. I am attracted to men, always have been. I just haven't said anything. And more or less was like, hey, maybe say a prayer for me because, this is big. I mean, I got ordained in the Free Will Baptist Church in a couple years ago. I'd been preaching in the Free Will Baptist Church since 2016, had been, taken on an active role since I was 8 years old, and didn't really have a ton of conversations about it post conversations saying, like, hey, maybe say a prayer for me. I'm dealing with this and need to figure out how to do this. At the time, it was very supportive and, I love you no matter what. Then, a couple of days later, received the text saying, I need to take a step back because I don't like where your life's going, yada, yada, yada. Okay,
Mm. Mm.
whatever. It sucked, not going to lie,
Mm-hmm.
but okay. I was kind of bracing for that because I
Mm-hmm.
knew if I'm going to accept this and it's been this hard for me to accept, I get that it's hard on people to accept that. And I'm not in charge of their reactions.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, still, I mean, I'm currently living with my parents at this point and had not said anything to them. We just had not gotten there yet. So I get a call from the pastor of this church that I've been a part of for so long, ballistic over, I have come out. And I mean, this is a very homophobic pastor.
Mm-hmm.
very, very upfront about that. Very well known that he is homophobic.
Mm.
And even before coming out, and when I was very much still in the closet, had always had such a burden for how this community has been treated by the church
Mm-hmm.
and how wrong we had gotten it. So get this call, and I had just come to the conclusion, like I said, I'm not in charge of people's reactions. I'm not in charge of how people feel about this. I'm in charge of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I'm not going to change some people's minds. Um, I'm not going to change everybody's mind. And I'm not necessarily looking to change everybody's mind. All I'm trying to do is say, hey, this is who I am at this point in my life. It's always been this way. And I just need some support from those who will support me.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in my life, when I'm first coming out at that point, I'm not looking to be a gay missionary. I'm just trying to cope and learn, what it is, what is this all about?
Mm-hmm.
So after some back and forth, long story short, um, I was asked, why did you leave the church? And my response to that is, I did not leave the church left me.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I may have stepped back, but where I'm at in my life, that we were just not, we were growing apart before that. And that's just how it is. So, ordination, got a letter in the mail, ordination's revoked,
Oh
sent in my
no.
certificates, all this stuff. And I was expecting it, still a punch in the gut,
Uh-huh.
but just, sent it in and drove on. Come to find out that my parents had been informed of this without my knowledge.
Oh.
Um, so I sat down first with my dad. Now, I want you to understand my dad is very much redneck country guy. Let's go kill something type of guy. But he is also, to know him, you would never expect this from him. He is a world traveler. He has been in the majority of countries on the planet. At least he's been on 90. I mean, he's covered the globe. I mean, he has covered the globe with his job and with his military experience.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy's had some cultural experience that, not the whole entire world is not like the Southeast.
That's true. So true.
Um,
Thank goodness.
and so I told my dad first, I was like, hey, you may have already heard, but you're probably going to hear a rumor. And that I'm gay, and I just want you to know that it is true. And I had actually told him, to start off, I said, Dad, I'm not attracted to women. And he said, well, and you just have to, I mean, he's very slow to speak. I will give him that. He said, well, so are you attracted to men? And I said, yes, yes, I am. We're having coffee one morning when we're having this conversation. He said, well, I can't relate, but I'll support you and help you in any way that I can.
Oh, bless him.
So that was so refreshing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
does he understand? Absolutely not. But at the same time, does not shun that which he does not understand.
Mm-hmm.
I have two uncles who are gay that have been wonderful. So I mean, he grew up with them. So I mean, I believe God, like I said, God does all things well. I believe God lined it up. They paved the
Mm-hmm.
way for me, and I want to pave the way for somebody else.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So we're sitting there, we're talking, and we're like, okay, we're gonna have to tell mom at some point, but not today.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point she may hear this, and maybe we have grown a little bit when she hears this, but she, she was the one that took us to church. She's the one that, like, she taught the women's Bible study, Sunday school, Awana programs, VBS, all this stuff. And on the flip side of this coin has not necessarily been around as much as my dad,
Mm-hmm.
and has the perspective. So does not have the experience with all this, to the point where that was not as welcome to her.
Mm-hmm.
So with my mother, we just don't talk about it. We're okay. We live in the same house. We have a good relationship. We just don't discuss it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
if that's her coping mechanism for now, by
Mm-hmm.
all means. I do want to share how my grandmother reacted when I told her,
Okay.
because everyone needs this type of person in their corner. And I'm going to try not to cry as I tell this story.
Is this your mom's mother or your dad's mom?
My dad's mother. So,
Okay.
the mother of 2 out of 3 of her sons are gay. And so, I mean, she's had the experience, and she is
Uh-huh.
just this precious, precious little human being who runs on jet black coffee and about 2 packs of cigarettes a day.
Oh.
And this, just this amazing little strong woman
Mm-hmm.
that has been through so much, who just has this big heart. And
Mm-hmm.
so, we're actually I was taking her to a doctor's appointment, and I said, Nanny, I've got to tell you something. And, just word vomited, this is what's going on. And she said, well, let me tell you something. She said, don't ever let anyone make you feel like you are less of a human being, or that God does not love you, because
Oh.
in my heart of hearts, I knew that. But everyone needs to hear that at some point in their life, at least once.
Yes.
And that conversation I can go back to, and I draw strength from that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I have found is the majority of people are cool with it. Most
Mm-hmm.
people don't necessarily care who you love, but it's the few. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. It's that
Yeah.
that handful of people that are loud about it that get the
Mm-hmm.
attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have an amazing support network. Um, do they understand? Not really. Do they love and support? Yes, because you don't necessarily have to understand something in order to love somebody.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. And as long as they can, support you to where you don't feel like you're less than.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And my biggest fear is that, or was that, it's not so much anymore, but my biggest fear was that as changes took place in my life, and as people saw me change as a person,
Mm-hmm.
in reality, there's not really much to change. It's always been there. I never admitted it.
Uh-huh.
But people coming to terms with that would run people off.
Yeah, because I so respect you, Matthew, that you're giving your family and especially your mom the time to process it and come to a place of some understanding. The avoidance thing is going to work for a while, and
Right.
then it will wear on you. And I know that your vision looking forward, if you can, is that you would like to bring whatever boyfriend, husband home at some
Right.
point, that you would be able to have family home time with your boyfriend and not have to always be separated. And that is a work in progress. And that's why
Right.
I'm so impressed that you were not the vigilante part of coming out. Some people have to do that in order to like break away from the mold of the family and be more outspoken and set boundaries. And you were able to do this in a way that felt authentic to you
Right.
and supported your family in coming through it. I love what you said about how it takes us so much time to get to the awareness and to accept it. And we
Right.
can't just dump it in the middle of the dining room table and expect everybody to embrace us. Some people can, most people don't. But
Exactly.
but for you
And
to live at your home, that's brilliant. I mean, I'm so glad that they have kept that love path open for you.
right. Well, and even my dad said, I had a vision for your life, and
Yes.
every parent does.
Yes.
He said, and that is changing. He said it was just kind of my vision, but at the same time, he's willing to change that vision in that he understands that just because that's his vision for my life does not necessarily mean that's what's going to take place. Even
Right.
if I'm straight and married a woman, had a family, that vision is going to ebb and flow and kind of go outside of the lines.
Yeah.
So that has been a major, major help to me that do we understand it? No. Are we willing to give you space to figure it out and give ourselves the space to figure it out? Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, for the listeners who are hearing this story and probably identify greatly with the suicidal thoughts, there's probably more of a majority of us, especially those grounded in the church as children and growing up in the church, where the whole abomination, hell thing was so hard for us to come through and to make peace with. So, in those moments of contemplation of death and suicide and planning for it, what was the thing that kept you on earth to be able to get to that statement of that my faith's just going to catch up with me? But you had to make a thought in your head or a plan or something struck you to the point where you could say, I'm going to be who I am and I'll figure it out later. But to not let the thing that you had to figure out later be the thing that pushes you into suicide and a completion. What was it that kept you here?
So different instances. So there were several times where, I can't think of a time in the past 10 years that I didn't go to bed at night and think about my funeral, think about my death, think maybe I won't wake up in the morning. So a lot of it was just praying, God, please take me out. If you are not going to fix me, take me out. That was number one. So in the times where I actively had the plan, had it all mapped out, the thing that kept me here was I knew there was just something within me that told this just kept ringing out in the darkest of times that there is something God is going to do here. There is something that God is going to use my life for. And in the worst of times, there was still this shred, this spark, this tiny little gleam that at some point, it's going to be okay. And on the other side of that, when I didn't necessarily have that, it was my family, especially my grandmother that I had mentioned. Had she not been in my life, it probably, her and some of the closest friends that I've had, they are what kept me here. When I didn't necessarily have the gleam, the little sliver of hope, it was my family and friends that I could not do that to.
Right.
So that's kind of, like I said, it just depended on the situation at the time as to what I reached for.
Right. Right. And for those of you listening who may not have that gleam or those people, know that if you're listening to this story, this is your gleam. Every time people like Matthew are sharing their story and you're listening to it, whether you found it or you've listened to all of them, but this is the one that resonates with you, that is the gleam. That is the Holy Spirit. That's God allowing you to hear this, being present with you right now in this moment, saying, I'm here. I'm here. And that's what we are. There's a great podcast called Bible Project. I don't know if you found it, but it's called Bible Project. And it is so amazing. They do these very lengthy year-long sometimes episodes on either the Beatitudes. And right now we're doing a Bible study with a friend of mine that's talking about the Son of Man. But it's things like that we find. If you found the Gay with God podcast, you find it, and you don't know how you found it, you don't know what it's all about, but it's something that gets put into your life, and it's relevant. We know that God is always speaking to us. And what we learned last night on the podcast was that we are God's hands and feet and mouth on earth. There used to be burning bushes, apparently. Midge never got one. I wanted one. I wanted the light up path to just say, just put me on the light up path. I'll look for it, show it to me, I'll do it. I'll do whatever. But most of us have to stumble along the way. But as we're stumbling along the way, there are people that are the hands, the mouth, the feet of God in action on earth. I call us all earth angels. That when we might say, like Cody said this one sentence in a podcast one day, and Matthew heard it, and he was like, that's it. The oxygen. That's it. And you resonate with something. Don't think that was a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. It is something specifically for us. And people bring it to us through God's intervention in all of us. We are the ones that are doing the work on this planet. And that's why I love Matthew telling the story and being so amazing at communicating his struggle and being able to look at how he was able to sustain it. So until we decide to shut the book, our chapters aren't over.
Exactly.
We continue to write our story as we live it. And it's not all pretty. And sometimes it hurts really, really badly. But we are here because we deserve to be here.
Yes. And I love that you said, this is the gleam of hope.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying today. Mm-hmm. And that's my burden for my community now.
Mm-hmm.
That person that is listening to this, that is thinking, I just need something or someone who gets it, who maybe shares in my struggle.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I wanted to have this conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
I was figuring out, how do I go about this? Do I do a big post? Do I to say, hey, I am here and this is a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my burden with my life, is this is a safe place now. I want to be the safe place that I needed when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you are listening to this, by all means, go to my bio page, hit me up, send me a message. We will talk.
Mm-hmm.
Because I needed that.
Mm-hmm.
I got to connect with some amazing people. I messaged Cody after I listened to his podcast or his episode. I Snapchat him, text him every day, probably drive him crazy, but he's doing so well, and I just love him and his boyfriend, and I'm yet to meet him in person, but I feel like I've known him all my life.
Uh-huh.
And I connected with Pastor Drake from Maison Church in Gainesville, Florida. Love them, love their ministry. It's so wonderful. If you're on TikTok, look them up. Grace Point in Nashville, Josh Scott, talked with him a few days ago. Just, don't be afraid to reach out.
Mm-hmm.
I get what I'm saying. Find somewhere. And if you message somebody, they don't message somebody else. Reach out. Someone will reach back.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's the thing that we need to remember, that there are so many people now that are walking this path and are absolutely wanting to be helpful to the next the next person coming through, because when you have gone through religious trauma, when you have families that are very narrow, and what I mean by that is like when you explain that your dad had this global reach, that he'd been all over the globe, but mom hadn't, and that really makes a difference. If you've never
It does.
lived outside of your county of origin or your home of origin, and you've never met even anybody from the north, the difference between the southern Christians and the northern Christians,
Oh,
there's a difference. I went to
yes.
school in Massachusetts. I lived in North Carolina, and I could not believe the difference in how people thought. It's just a
Yeah.
different viewpoint, and they've been
100%.
raised differently. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, that's one, that's why we take patience with people, because we needed time to figure ourselves out. They need time to figure out a new us. And as
Yes.
long as you're safe and you're not being beat down mentally or physically, then let them get to where they need to go. And there may be difficult conversations, but while you're opening yourself up to that, you need to open yourself up to somebody who can feed you, who can support you through that, through therapy, as Matthew talked about, through reaching out to people on the internet that are positive change agents and are open and affirming, and find churches that are open and affirming. But first, and I said this on a podcast the other day, and I've said it to a group that I spoke to at the college, do not just walk into a church blindly. People, we are live
Yes.
streaming churches all over the place. So find something in your area and live stream it first. Check it out. Look at their web page. If they don't have anything on there that's open and affirming, don't go there unless you have a good recommendation from somebody who is gay and has been there before. Check out these churches, because you're setting yourself up to go backwards several steps if you try
Yes.
church and it's horrible. And I say that from experience, my friends. I say it from
Yes.
experience.
Same. 100%. Yes. I totally agree.
So I'm interested, Matthew, that the ordination got debunked. What happened with that? What's happening with the ordination? What's happening with your ongoing ministry? Where are you at?
First, I wrestled with that. I felt like somewhat of a rebel without a cause, I guess. Um, I had gone rogue or something like that. But then it hit me, Jesus didn't have an ordination certificate, and he did pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even for the evangelicals that may hear this, Billy Graham did not have an ordination certificate, and he did pretty good in the evangelical world. Um, so I've just come to grips with right now, I don't need it, don't necessarily require that in order to do what I feel God has called me to do.
Okay.
At some point would be nice to have that back. I do want to say, and this is, you were talking about churches that may not have something affirming on their
Mm-hmm.
website, or, a rainbow flag over their door.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we have to understand that people are people. And what I have run into, to take that a step further, is we don't necessarily care you're gay. We support you, but you just can't do anything inside this building with that. We will give you just a little space, but don't be exactly who you are.
Mm.
Is what I have run into, especially with the churches that, yeah, come on, come on, come on.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's, at some point you have to change and be just like us.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something I will say to be careful for. The church I came out of, according to what I was given,
Mm-hmm.
it was not because I came out. Because I never really had the conversation with the pastor, hey, yes, I am gay. I just kind of let that go because there was no winning there.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I got my ordination revoked was not submitting to the authority of the man of God, and not submitting to my mentor. So it wasn't necessarily that I was gay, it was that I didn't do what I was told.
Mm.
It's one of those, like, they wouldn't even say the word, like, they were of the belief, the LGBT community stole the word gay, like it used to mean happy and yada yada. And I'm like, They don't even say gay. Um,
Don't say gay. That's like Texas.
exactly, exactly. So going forward, church for me, ministry for me has to look different. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm not here to see people. Jesus said, greatest commandment,
Yep.
love the Lord your God. The whole law is wrapped up in that. And love your neighbor as
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And we can believe, and we will die on the hill of burning bushes and fish that swallow human beings and 6 literal days of creation, a literal snake talking to Eve in a garden. We will die on those hills proving that happened. But we can't take Jesus at his word when he said, love each other.
Amen.
And that is what my burden for ministry is love people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't have to agree with my theological stances on creation or evolution or this or that. Just let's just love each other
Mm-hmm.
and know that God loves you. I am God's hand, foot, mouth, whatever.
Yes.
Know that he loves you and that I love you and that this is a safe space.
Yes. And if the whole world would just do it, this would all probably be over in a skinny little minute here. Jesus would
I
say, here's the kingdom. Congratulations. You
You
win.
got it. You got
Yep.
it. Yeah.
And I love that you say it needs to look different, and you're right. Church will never be perfect because we are not perfect. So you will never find a church that has every person in it that loves and affirms you or likes you or that you like. Even though we're called to love people, we do have preferences and we do have triggers. But when you come against that trigger, if you find somebody who's like a curmudgeon with you because of your faith or because of your belief that you can be gay with God, that's an opportunity to lead in and love their misunderstanding and to show them how that doesn't change who you are as a person. That's a part of who you are, but who we really are is how we treat other people.
Exactly.
So I can be straight, gay, trans, I can be anything, but it's how I treat people that tells
Exactly.
me whether or not I'm walking the walk of Jesus.
And understand that God made you you.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asked me one of my friends asked me when I came out to them, they said, are you going to start, acting different, painting your fingernails or carrying a person? I'm like, no, I'm not. That's not who I am. If it were, like, I would definitely expect you to respect me for that, but be you.
Mm-hmm.
God made you. God created you
Yeah.
for such a time as this, and live your truth.
Right.
You know, in the pop culture world we live in, I think the misconception is if you are a gay man, you're supposed to look this way. If you're a gay woman, you're supposed to look this way. If you're trans, you're supposed to look this way. Be you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even within this community, don't abandon who you are as a
Right.
person.
Right. And I think that's the one thing that the gay community can be held to task for is that we have so much um, dissension among you're not gay enough, you're not butch enough, you're not this, you're not that. I mean, we do it to ourselves.
Oh,
With the inner homophobia we have, we're always trying to put that on other people. But you look at the football players who've played football their whole career, and then some of them are now coming out. You know, they weren't wearing high heels out on the field. They weren't
oh yeah,
swishing. I mean, we have to honor who we really are. And I will never. I'm the tween. I'm not what you would classify as lipstick lesbian. All
exactly.
of my friends assure me that I'm not butch. I want to be. I have an inner butch in me, but I don't pull it off really well. But I have always been just who I am, and I can't.
Exactly.
I just now don't wear dresses because I'm not forced to, and I won't, and I never liked it anyway. But
Exactly. And like you in on the gay male side of this.
Yep.
I mean, of course, I talk like Paula Dean, but at the same time, we can go to the mall, we can get Starbucks and, have a grand old time. Or, we can go hiking, fishing, I drive a truck. So, just be who you are and
Yeah.
don't feel like you have to force yourself out of one box and into another.
Correct.
And that has been
Correct.
so freeing to me.
Yay.
And that's the
Oh,
beauty of this community, I believe, in the diversity of God's children,
mm-hmm.
is that there are no boxes. There's
Mm-hmm.
that was never God's intention for there to be boxes. Be who I made you to be.
Right. Right.
And that is beautiful. And that is one thing I love about this community, and one thing that is a struggle at times, because there are the stereotypes. But I also love about this community that, you know, before I came out, when I was still very much in the closet, I had a conversation with a pastor friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I had always had a burden for this community, in that I felt like we were done, that this community was very much done wrong by the church. I acknowledge
Mm-hmm.
that, even in the depths of my evangelical ministry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I said, where are we going wrong here? What is your take? I asked this person about it. And he said, do you not see the love and the acceptance that they have in that community? It does not matter who you are, where you come from, what you wear, how you talk, that you are accepted and loved the majority of the time. And like I said, that is one reason why I love this community so much, is that you can have that.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, and when people are bound together by the same type of trauma, whatever it was, trauma in the family coming out, trauma in the church coming out, whatever trauma it was that happened when you did come out, most of us have been through it and have empathy for each other, and we're willing
Exactly.
to walk each other home wherever that goes. And
Well,
it is a beautiful thing to watch how this community can rally together and support someone who is struggling. All we have to do as being a member of that community is to let each other know when we're struggling and speak out, because someone will be there for you for sure. Yeah. So on the show page, we will have your contact information. And of course, my contact information is there. You've heard Matthew talk about other people he has found online that have been responsive to him. So remember that you are never alone. Even if you are alone within a family system, the bigger family of all of us who are brothers and sisters in Christ, we are all still here for you. And we've been through tough stuff. We've made it through tough stuff. And surprise, we're still going to go through tough stuff
oh,
because we're in the political era right now. And we know
exactly.
it's going to be tough. And we have to band together and be the light that the world needs to see. The thing that helped me the most when I was trying to struggle through the religious crap is that I was given the opportunity to go to a church that was predominantly gay, which I really fought tooth and nail because I didn't understand why that was going to help me, because of course they would say it was okay because they're gay and they want it to
Exactly.
be okay. But what helped me in that situation is, in my experience, I had never seen a gay person that I knew of ever, except for the pride parades on the television, with all
Yeah.
of the most extreme forms of being out, and it scared
Exactly.
me. It scared me.
Yes.
And
Same here.
when I got to that church that day and finally was able to walk across the parking lot, took about 20 minutes sitting in my truck. Finally got around across the parking lot, and standing outside were all of these women and a couple of men, and they looked, now don't hate me for this, but this was my coming out experience. They looked normal. And I was introduced to them, and there was a doctor, there was a lawyer, a social worker, a teacher, somebody that worked at Home Depot. I mean, but it was like, oh my gosh, these are like real normal people. And I went into church, sat on the back pew because I felt safer there. And I started watching all these people stand up during hymns that I had sang at camp, same
Right.
hymns. They had their arms around each other, girl and girl, guy and guy. And some of them had little kids with them. And I'm like, oh, I felt like I was out like in the Twilight Zone or something. I was like, this is
Right.
like normal church. And it shocked me. It still took me a really long time to get through the religious trauma, but that's what kept me connected. That these people in this church at this time showed me, Mitch, it's not that different. It's just who we love, but we're still the same
Exactly.
people. We're Christians. So it's out there and it's available to you guys. Matthew, what else? Is there anything else that's burning on your heart that you want to tell people before we end today?
I think the last thing that I want to say is if you are like me and you want to, I like to know things for myself. I want to figure things out for myself. If you're looking for some, you know, not to give too much of an advertisement here, but just some more resources that helped me. Um, a friend of mine recommended Unclobber by Colby
Mm-hmm.
Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Every Christian should read it. Every person should read that. Every
Mm-hmm.
person who's ever church once, you should read this book. Unclobber by Colby Martin. Um, God and the Gay Christian by Matthew Vines. Those are my top two that helped me so much. Colby, especially because as a straight male coming from the evangelical church that came out as an ally and, had his credentials stripped and was kicked out of his ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was nice to see that perspective because, like you said, yeah, you expect an openly gay person to support, being a gay Christian,
Mm-hmm.
but when a straight person comes and says, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's yeah, we support
Mm-hmm.
that, we
Mm-hmm.
see that," that helped me.
Yes.
Uh, so that, and then Matthew Vine's perspective as a gay man in the church, so educated, so well written. It is so good. I will probably read that at least two or three more times.
Oh, that's awesome.
So much good information in there. But those are my top two, along with a long list that Cody sent me and so many other people have sent me. Um, but it is last thing I will say is find your safe place,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's reaching out to friends, family, an affirming church. Find a safe place, and because life is short,
Mm-hmm.
and even though it might be bad right now, and even though you don't know how this is ever going to work out and be okay, or how you're going to survive this, it will get better.
Mm.
It will get better. Just you have the strength within you to love you.
Mm-hmm.
You have that strength.
Mm-hmm.
God instilled that strength in you. Hone in on that strength. Find somebody that helps you pull that strength from within yourself.
Mm.
It is worth it. As someone who was in the evangelical church for 25 years, who never, ever, ever thought they would be on a Gay with God podcast, that
Yep.
used to be, no offense, that used to be blasphemy in my world.
Mine too.
But just know that there is life on the other side
Yeah.
of this struggle. And
Yes.
I pray for the day that the struggle is no longer normal,
Right.
if that makes
Yes.
that is that being your true authentic self is what is normal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you won't get killed for it.
Hallelujah.
That's right. Well, thank you, Matthew. It was a story well told and a story that we all needed to hear. And I thank you for being the light to everyone who's hearing this, and your journey's not over by far. I have no clue what's going to actually happen for you, but I do know that there's a purpose for you, and you started your ministry today right here. And thank you so much for being that for us. Yeah.
Thank you, Mitch.
You're welcome, honey. So, guys, listeners, thank you for tuning in for Matthew's story. And please go to the show page, empoweredmidge.podbean.com, to catch his links and how you can connect with him if you need to. And also remember to check out the Wild Goose Festival code, the discount code. So in case you want to come, you can get a little bit of money off the ticket. Check out our Facebook group, Gay with God, where we do a monthly Zoom group entitled My Faith Journey. And if you need support to help you through your coming out or faith journey, go to the show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com and scroll all the way down to the bottom and see how you can connect with me. You can also find me on gaywithgod.com. That's my website where you can find the book. You can find how to hire me for stuff, how to invite me to your book club, or how to invite me to speak to your group. I'm up for all of that. And if you are listening to this podcast and are questioning whether you can be gay and be in a relationship with the God of your understanding, if you identify as LGBTQI+, or you're not even sure if you're gay, God has always been within you, even when you didn't know it. You have always been Gay with God. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to see how you can join the Gay with God community. And as always, you are loved. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger. Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.